So thanks for taking some time out of your schedule for this meeting. I know that's a lot to ask. We try to only do these a couple times a year, and we try to bring as much value as we can to these meetings. Make them quick hitting, give you an update. You'll see that we try to also put stuff out on Insight. I do videos once in a while, trying to update y'all on some things that are happening in the city. Just this past week, maybe you saw an email go out, and it was called the Mayor's Column, and it was about crime and public safety. That's something I'm going to try to do more often, too, is do a column like that on a topic. So you may see that from time to time. The media will maybe pick those up or not, but really just trying to communicate more often with you all. We got some great speakers today, and if you know anything about TED Talks, if you've ever heard of TED Talks, they're just real quick-hitting, short, concise talks. So we're going to burn through a lot in an hour. We're really kind of looking ahead to 2020. What's going on in 2020? We're going to cover a lot of stuff on some of the current events, i.e. coronavirus, spring flooding, but also some of the longer, more strategic initiatives that we're also working on in the city. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that we're probably 5 weeks out from an election, April 14. We have city council elections. And I need to encourage you guys to get out and vote. All right? You know more than most that local elections matter and municipal elections matter. And so please make time to get out and vote. I will go on record in saying if your supervisor would give you any grief for missing some work to get out and vote, you let me know, and we'll deal with it. Because that's more important than a pothole or cleaning up some water or giving a shot at the health clinic. Get out and vote that day. Really, really important. You are here today, too, because I want you guys to know that you matter. Each of you plays a critical part in the city and what we're doing right now. And I think of a lot of times there's all these cogs in the wheel in the city, and each of you plays such an important part, and I hope you know that. I hope you feel valued by our office on how much we appreciate you guys and the work you're doing for the city. We were in a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think Chief Burns actually used this term. He talked about just having a victory mindset. He said, we need to come to work every day with a victory mindset. And I love that term, meaning I'm going to come to work today with, we're going to win today. We're going to not worry about naysayers. We're going to block out negativity. We're going to not deal with and focus on the challenges. We're going to focus on the wins and the victories. And so a victory mindset is a term you're going to hear more out of our office. It's a term you can use also in your own departments. Talk about, hey, you're not bringing a victory mindset today. I need you to turn that frown upside down and bring a victory mindset each day to work. So we're going to start today by talking about, let's see if this works. Here we go. An update on One Sioux Falls. So we're using the One Sioux Falls framework to drive a lot of the initiatives in the city. Okay? You've seen this before, you know about this, so you're probably asking, okay, what's been happening in each of those quadrants? What are we doing in safety and health, in housing, workforce, engaging people, innovation, foundational growth? So Eric and I are going to talk about those. First thing, when we talk about safety and health, what we mean by that is one of the core tenets of government, one of the things every resident expects of us is to provide a safe community in which the health and well-being of our citizens is above the national average. People expect public safety and health. So what have we done in the last, it will be 2 years in May that I'll have been in office. What's some progress we're making on that front? Here's a few things I just want to highlight. First being the Community Triage Center, which a lot of you know about that project, which I'm giving you some inside baseball today. That facility is going to be called The Link. That's going to be the term for it, The Link. Community Triage Center sounds very bureaucratic. We're going to be calling that The Link. The Link is going to be open this fall. Jill Franken, who you're going to hear from in a minute, has been spending a lot of time on that project and has been an incredible champion for us on that, which will help serve vulnerable populations, people with addiction, behavioral health challenges in our city. We're working on a bond. This has been a lot of work setting the traps and putting all the details together on this bond, but a bond that we'll be bringing forward for a new, much-needed public safety training center, getting off the Air Guard base and the airport location and out on the northeast side of Sioux Falls, a new Metro 911 facility, which also is sorely needed. We've kind of hit the ceiling almost literally with our current Metro facility. And then paying cash for Fire Station 12, which your city council is going to actually vote on tonight. Fire Station 12, our next fire station, will be at 41st and Faith, out by Highway 11, off Highway 11, Veterans Parkway out there. There's also been some great things that our PD has done by standing up things like the Narcotics Crimes Unit. We have our first mental health community resource officer, Sarah, which you'll hear from in a little bit. We added a narcotics sergeant. We've added some additional training dollars into the budget for PD. And so we continue to resource the enforcement side of safety and health as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us today. One critical piece of that framework is accessible housing. We have done a number of really great things in this arena, thanks in part to Jeff Eckhoff, Shelley Unruh, the entirety of the housing team, and multiple people across other departments and divisions as well. A couple of those items specifically that we've focused on include the Housing Summit, just as an example. So last year we held the first Housing Summit, and that was really a great opportunity for us to bring in industry leaders from all across the community that work in the field of housing to help them build bridges, network, and really grow a focus on housing in our community and identify what those niches are, those needs are within our community for housing, and ways that we can help address them. I think within just a couple of weeks, March 25th, I believe, is the day we'll be holding the next Housing Summit this year. So thanks to Shelley and her team for moving that forward, because it really does help elevate the conversation around housing in our community. We also have worked really hard to ensure that we're realigning our budgets, not just within housing, but all of our departments for that matter, to help address the evolution in our community's needs, specifically in this instance with respect to housing. So Shelley was able to present a budget last fall to our council for consideration that was a realigned budget that met the needs of our community moving forward, and they were unanimously in support of that. So we're very thankful to her for moving that forward. In addition to that, we know that we have a finite amount of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to use when it comes to housing initiatives. And so we're continuing to look for new partnerships, ways in which that we can leverage those dollars to maximize our impact across the community. One of the ways that we're doing that will actually be announced on Friday of this week at a press conference, of which the mayor will speak at, along with Shelley, members of her team, and Habitat for Humanity. So that's one organization in the community that we've partnered with in the past, but maybe not to this degree. So we're excited to announce that partnership on Friday and look forward to announcing more partnerships like that in the very near future. One very new way that we're looking at creating new housing within the community is by growing a fund in which we're calling the Housing Trust Fund. This is not an entirely new concept to the state of South Dakota or the city of Sioux Falls, because it's been explored in the past, but it's never been moved forward. And so we want to create a fund, and we're working on the structure of that fund right now so that we have sustainable revenue streams coming into the fund. But those monies, those dollars, will be utilized across the community to address the housing needs that we have, not only for today, but the housing needs as they continue to change and grow well into the future. So we're really excited about that opportunity to bring that fund forward and work with several of our council members, along with multiple team members across a couple of different departments to do that. And the last project that I wanted to comment on real quick with respect to housing is the Vets Tiny Home Project. So you may have heard about this already. This actually came to fruition as a result of one of last year's Onward teams bringing this concept forward. And thankfully, that team continued to develop that concept and idea, and it's evolved to the point where as long as we're able to identify some real key partners here in a very short time frame, we feel like there's a very good chance that we could actually move dirt on that project yet this year. And that will lead to not only tiny home development for veterans, but also some transitional housing that will go along with the next step after tiny homes. So we're so incredibly thankful for all the team members that have put time into seeing that idea and concept come to light.
And oddly enough, what kicked that off was a relationship that was cemented at the Housing Summit. And that really kind of kicked it into overdrive. So it was neat to see that come full circle.
And one of the reasons that we're so focused on housing is because we have a growing workforce, and we want to continue to grow that workforce. And as you'll see on the slide in front of you, we're doing that because we want to attract really great workforce talent and keep our workforce talent here in Sioux Falls so that our existing businesses can grow and that we can continue to grow our economy with new businesses as well. A couple of the initiatives that we're undertaking right now within this One Sioux Falls framework that meet this need for workforce include the bond that the mayor referenced just a couple of slides ago. That bond will also include funding for Phase 3 of the River Greenway improvements located here within downtown Sioux Falls. I think we've all been able to see the tangible impacts that both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the River Greenway improvements had on our community, both because of the private sector investment that's taken place, but also just getting people down to readdress and re-engage with the river and understand the importance of water quality that comes along with that. So it's had a lot of really positive impacts on our community as a result of that. And ultimately, we utilize that now as an attraction to help us bring in new workforce to Sioux Falls. In addition to that, just recently, the mayor actually announced the formation of an arts task force. The arts and culture, that whole scene within Sioux Falls has been growing tremendously, and thanks in part to Sculpture Walk and the investments that were made by the city 20 plus years ago with that program. But it has evolved now that we have multiple organizations involved in this. We have city assets that are arts investments that we need to continue to maintain and grow as well. And so that arts task force is gonna help us develop a plan on how to do that effectively and efficiently moving well into the future. Third item on the list here is the Events Center Campus Strategy. So last year we had a task force in place that studied the Events Center campus and came up with a number of recommendations for the mayor's consideration. Under Jeff Eckhoff's leadership and the Planning and Development Services team's hard work, they've developed a strategy formulated around those recommendations and will actually be bringing that forward for the council's consideration later this spring. So we look forward to getting that out to all of you as well when the time is right to do that. But ultimately, you're gonna see us make investments into that campus in the future as well. And last on the list is the AARP Age-Friendly Community Designation. So thanks to Jill Franken and her team at the health department, which this was actually one of their BHAGs, we have been the first community in South Dakota to earn this honor and this designation. And the designation allows us to emphasize just how wonderful it is to live in Sioux Falls, no matter what age you are. And it provides us with different resources and how to engage various populations based upon their age in Sioux Falls. So it's a big deal for our community to be able to receive that honor and that designation.
Engaging people. What do we mean by that? Engage, collaborate, and partner with the community and solve our challenges and seize our opportunities. What does that look like? Well, engaging with the community has been a focus, but when we put One Sioux Falls together, that engaging people quadrant was really first and foremost focused on you guys. And how do we be intentional about focusing on some changes to our city culture, right, and our workplace culture? We are one of the largest employers in the region, and we have to make investments in our employees, just like the private sector would make investments in their employees and build a culture where you guys want to come to work every day with a victory mindset. And so I've been very, very intentional about that. It's a hard thing to do. Hopefully you've seen some fruits of that labor with whether it's small policy changes or implementing things like Pecan. We're trying to continue to make the city one of the best places to work. We also have been intentional about improving and growing some of our city and what I'll call strategic partner relationships with Brandon and with Harrisburg and with Lincoln County Commission and the Minnehaha County Commission. And just before this at lunch, I was speaking to the Harrisburg Chamber of Commerce. Historically, maybe we've been a little bit competitive with each other. I went in there and talked about how can we work together more and what can a collaboration between our chambers and our cities look like more. So I've been working on engaging the city of Sioux Falls' relationship with those communities and trying to provide more transparent leadership. I'm trying to be very accessible. You can You can tweet at me. You can catch me on LinkedIn, Instagram. The first Friday of every month, I have open office hours in the mayor's office. We're doing columns like you saw about your crime and so forth. Trying to be very transparent in the leadership style, be accessible, so that people know that they can engage with their city government. And when you do that, it re-engages people to want to get involved with their city government.
All right, so wrapping these 4 quadrants are 2 items: foundational growth and innovation. First and foremost, foundational growth. So I just had an opportunity yesterday to speak with a class down at USD and talked a lot about the importance of foundational growth and how within this part of our framework, we're really setting ourselves up for success 20, 40, 60 years from now. So all of the day-to-day actions that you guys are a part of, you're helping not only our community today, but well into the future as a result of this growth that we're undertaking. Foundational growth. So first and foremost, highway and street investments. We're investing a significant amount of our capital program into major and minor street and highway investments in our community. It's foundational to how we function on a day-to-day basis and how, quite frankly, our economy grows. So you're going to continue to see that moving forward, those types of significant investments into that foundational growth that really helps support all of our residents living and working here. The second item there is water reclamation improvements. We're investing $160 million into the expansion of our treatment plant and $100 million into the collection system. That, in essence, is foundational to how we can and how we will have an opportunity to grow into the future. So as a developer or as a business owner, that's one of the very first questions that you ask coming into a community or even in giving consideration to a project. Is there sewerability on the site? Is there sewerability that can sustain the kind of load, right, that my company is bringing to this community? That's foundational to how we are able to grow moving forward. So these types of investments will impact us well into the future. The last bullet point there, the mayor commented on Fire Station 12. That's in response to the significant growth that we've seen occur on the southeast side of Sioux Falls. The police report to work site that's going to be located on the southwest side of Sioux Falls, that's also a foundational piece of how we're growing our internal resources and how we're leveraging those resources to bring better service to the community. And last but not least, all of this takes a lot of strategy. So we continually within each department have to be thinking about those investments that we need to be making well into the future. And strategic land acquisition is one of those items. So had the public works team not thought long and hard about the purchase of land decades ago, for the expansion of our wastewater treatment facility, we wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity today. So those strategic investments that you are all a part of today are impacting us well into the future and setting us up for foundational success.
Last piece on this is innovation. Making community impact with fresh ideas, emerging trends, human-centered design methodology, and the best available data. The team knows I'm a big data guy. I like to see data that shows us, hey, are we having a positive ROI on these investments? Are we moving the needle? And here's some of the things that we've tried to implement the last 2 years, and to what I feel is some level of success. You know, when we talk about core teams, there are transit team that's working on an on-demand transit pilot, which will be coming forward this year. When we talk about core teams, those core teams are not set up to fix something that and come into a department and say, well, you guys haven't been able to figure it out. Let this core team figure it out. That's not it at all. What they're meant to do is to provide help and resources and to say, let us help. How can we solve problems together? Right? No one has a monopoly on the best ideas. I rely a lot of times on people coming into my office and saying, tell me how to do this better because I haven't been able to figure this out. And those core teams have been, this specifically this one with transit, I think very impactful in infusing a new way of innovating within the city. We're going to stand up some more of those core teams in the years ahead to tackle bigger problems we may have in our city. You know, with See-Click Fix, we've closed almost 13,000 tickets since we launched that less than a year ago. It's been hugely impactful. The citizen satisfaction with that has been tremendous. It has streamlined our workflow, huge innovation win in communicating with people how they want to be communicated with. A lot of people don't want to call a pothole hotline. They want to just do it via their app, as a street team will tell you, and that's been a success. And finally, Traction. You may not know about Traction. Some of the leadership team in the room may know about Traction. That's a new way that we're tackling problems in our city leadership meetings. We're setting what we call ROCs, which are quarterly goals. Things that if we know we have to get the ball down to the goal line here, how are we moving it 5 yards at a time throughout the year so that we can eventually spike the football 3 years from now? And you have to take a big goal and break it up into smaller chunks. That's what Traction has allowed us to do. So those are a few updates of things that have been happening around the One Sioux Falls framework. I'm going to turn it back over to Rana to give you an update on culture and where we're doing with our Pecan.
Thank you. Let's talk about Pecan Gang. So, as of now, we have the entire organization on Pecan, which is outstanding. And our overall score on that 10 scale is 7.7. We are still rocking the house at 96% participation rate. So I'd tell you to slap each other a high five, but with coronavirus, maybe you just do a little elbow bump to one another quick if you do that, please. Like, yeah, nice, right? So remember, our next survey is March 18th. That'll be the first survey where the entire organization is participating together. So also our net promoter score. What's really good to see here, gang, is that we've got about 80% of our employee group above the line, right? And about 20% in that detractors. So let's also remember what the scoring or the rating scale looks like. So that 7.7 for us overall, you can see just tips us right up towards the top end of passives. And as you're completing the surveys, keep this in mind, gang, because this isn't just our typical American rating scale, right? Like where a 5 is average. So it's really important to keep this in mind because we need accurate, good data, right? We don't want to be working off of inaccurate or false data. So keep in mind that 6 and below is really considered kind of a thumbs down, and 7 to 8 is kind of in the middle, and that 9 and 10 is you're saying, yes, thumbs up, this is really good. Make sense? Yeah, we all just needed a quick reminder on that. The other thing to remember too is if you come across a question in Pecan and you're not sure that it applies to you or you don't understand what it means, we don't want to just automatically give that question a 0 or a 5 or somewhat of a poor score. Just skip it and move on to the next. Got it? Thumbs up? Sweet. Okay. So remember too that this is our formula for success, right? We want to always be honest. Every single question that you get, always want you to be honest in your answers. And here's a big one, respectful. Sometimes those keyboard muscles, man, we flex those keyboard muscles a bit, right? So remember, we have to come at this together with a good, respectful tone, and that our actions want to be proactive. So another really important reminder to you is as you're putting those comments in and giving all of that great feedback, remember to throw us a bone too, right? Give us an idea or an example about how you might see betterment, that proactive victory mindset. So a couple other things in the dashboard as we look at ourselves as a whole. Again, now that the whole city is on, goal setting, we just rock it at goal setting, and we also crush it in accomplishment, which should be no surprise to you because we get things done and we do it well. So again, maybe not a high five, maybe give your neighbor a little elbow there. We do things well. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, and keep that going. Also have to say, I love that this continues to be one of our top drivers, and that's meaningful work. Each one of us, that connection that binds us is that spirit of public service. And so it's awesome to see that every single thing you do each day is meaningful and important. And sometimes it's hard, right? Firemen go out and save lives, meaningful work. I think about the utility billing gals. Sometimes those transactional things each day, or finance, those transactional things don't feel so great. But remember, every single person in our organization plays a really important part in serving this community. So again, thank you for all that you do and that you are doing. Also want to really give a big shout out and encourage you to keep going on all of the culture activation teams, the culture clubs, and those that still have those well-being champion groups going. These are amazing. You guys are doing great work. So if your department or division doesn't have some of these employee task force or work groups going, encourage you to get those started. They are very well received and doing really good work across the whole organization. So I wouldn't lie if I didn't say we had some opportunities for improvement, right? We all know that. We have opportunities of improvement within ourselves, within our teams, departments, and the whole organization. So I want to call your attention to those impact circles up there to the right of the number. The closer that those circles are together, it means that that particular driver has a lot of significance to your career well-being, to us as a city as a whole. So autonomy is a place for us to keep growing and getting stronger. So raise your hand if you like to be micromanaged, right? Nobody does. We don't like to be micromanaged by our supervisor. We don't like to be micromanaged by our coworkers. So keep in mind, let people do their work in that way that brings meaning to them. So good reminder for all of us. Autonomy is really important for us. Strategy is another opportunity. Specifically, the subdriver in that strategy is communication, which is why we loaded up the first 15 minutes of this 1 hour with you to give you an update on the one team, progress and future outlook. We definitely know we need to keep a better line of communication going on our strategy and how we're doing to achieve those as an organization, within departments, and within teams. And take a note to that impact circle. This one I'm really excited to tell you about. Freedom of opinions, since the first day that we put Pecan out to the employee group, has always sat on our opportunity board, and it still does, right? It still does. But what I want to share with you is that over the essentially course of 1 year, we have brought that freedom of opinion driver up by 0.5 point. And you might think that that's not a lot, but I just want to tell you that that's really significant. Specifically within that subdriver of freedom of opinion is actually freedom of opinion between coworkers. So when we look at the one question or the one thing that is having that freedom of opinion drive that score a little bit lower and always hitting our opportunity board is actually the freedom of opinion between coworkers. And I'm really happy to share with you that that has come up by 0.8. So Pecan itself are events like this, those activation teams, those culture clubs, all of those things are making a difference. And Pecan has been a great driver to improve that communication between leaders and their teams. So again, high five. Let's keep that going. So I want to ask you a question. I shared with you a couple minutes ago that 7.7 is our overall citywide engagement score on that 1 to 10 scale. I want to ask you this, and let's see who might be able to give the answer. Whose score is that? Is that Mayor Paul's? Is that Erica's? Is that the director's and the chief? It's yours. It's your score. It's my score. It's the mayor's score. It's the director's score. It's the supervisor's. It's everybody's score. It's right there. We all have our hands in what that overall engagement score looks like as an organization and with every leader and every team. We're all in this score, every single one of us. And there's scores, you guys, all across the city. Every supervisor who has 5 or more direct reports has an overall engagement score for their team. And everybody on that team owns that score. Everybody on that team owns that score. That's all of us working together proactively. And let me tell you what our goal is. Our goal is an 8.5. Our goal is an 8.5. And guess what, team? We're going to need that 8.5 if we're going to be one of the strongest cities in the nation. To achieve and keep doing all those great things that Mayor Paul and Erica just talked about in the One Sioux Falls update, we're going to need that 8.5, and we're going to need to keep it. So I want to ask you, what is it you think that's going to, what is one of the most important critical things that's going to get us to that 8.5, to close the 7.7 to the 8.5? What is it? I'm going to give you a clue. This is your clue. Any guesses? What's your thinking? Everybody in this room, your greatest success or failure lands on one thing, your mindset and our thinking. So what's that? What did I just put on the screen? A black line. Our thinking can do one of two things. We can be what we might call above the line, or we can be what we might call below the line. Above the line, is that positive or negative? You know it, positive. Below the line, positive or negative? Negative. Do we ever go negative? Of course we do, we're human beings. The point is we don't stay there very long, nor do we allow our coworkers, our leaders, or anyone else that we interface with, family, friends, community. So, victory thinking, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. That's what we need to get to that 8.5. Sometimes we go there, but we don't stay there very long. Right on, you guys. That victory thinking is that leader's mindset, team. Victory thinking is leader's mindset. So to hit that 8.5, to be one of the strongest cities in the nation, we need that. Raise your hand if you're a leader in the room. Absolutely. Every single employee in this organization is a leader. Leadership is not a position or a title, it's influence for positive impact. So we need that. Be proactive, working together. That investment in each other, we invest in you, you invest in us, we. Awesome. So, speaking of leaders and a victory mindset, please put your hands together as we welcome Director Jeff Eckhoff to give us a snapshot of all the victories across our community.
Oh, good, the lights were so I can't see it. That's awesome. So, just so you know, nobody fell down back there. It was a FedEx guy. True story. Boom, 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 FedEx guy. It's like, okay. None of us work here, none of us could sign, but he left his package and took off. So, anyway, thank you for being here today. I have to thank my staff for putting the slideshow together and the notes. The secret of any success is having people smarter than you around you, and I certainly am blessed with that in planning and development. What we're going to do is just take a little tour around town and talk about some of the developments that have happened and are under construction now. They're going to be happening this year. We're going to start downtown. The first one I want to talk about is the East Bank Depot. It's a private development by the Howell family, the Howell plumbing family. They took an old warehouse, they reconfigured it. There's 6,000 square feet of retail space that's going to face to the west. And that's the view you have from here. 1,000 square feet roughly bays with some unique space in them, and a couple larger 1,000 square foot lofts up above in the higher part in the back. The second project is one you may have heard about. It's the first completed sale in the rail yard redevelopment area for us. It was Rail Yard Flats, which is Jeff Surslick's project. It's a 71,000 square foot mixed use, retail on the bottom, probably office or commercial on top of that faces 8th Street, and then 42 apartment units behind that. It's a $15 million project. He'll be breaking ground here real soon in the spring. During that transaction, we also optioned the 2 acres to the north of that for what we just sort of lovingly call Sharapa 2, and Jeff has 2 years to put that project together in the option that we worked with him on. The big project, the big project for this year, or probably for any year, is truly a transformational type of a project downtown, and that's Lloyd Company's redevelopment of the Sioux Steel area. And if you just stop and think about $185+ million investment, and let that sink in for a while and think about what the size and the scope of that. It's a 3-part project. It's a 7-story Canopy Hotel by Hilton. If you go online on Hilton, Canopy is a very exclusive brand. It's very place-based. I think we're the 11th or 12th one in the world that they've built. And so it's a real honor to have that project in our community. The second part of it is a 9-story office building. Conservative estimates, 500+ jobs that would be housed in that. And as you look at that, the office complex is to the left, is retail on the bottom, and the hotel is on the right. And the hotel will also have 60,000 square foot of convention space, conference space, which would be awesome to have that downtown. And then the third part is a 900 stall, 8-story parking ramp. There'll be a wrap, which is something new for Sioux Falls, where there's 100 residential units and some commercial wrapped around the outside. So when you look at it, it's just going to look like another building, and the ramp will be in the middle. And you see that in Des Moines and Minneapolis and other cities. And it's a really cool way to get that density downtown that we want to activate and really make downtown and complement all that's been going on down there. The city participated in a $21.5 million TIF for that. It's a big TIF, but it's a big project, and it's a big lift for downtown. We're very excited about that. We're going to move to the east side now, in particular the Dolly Farm development and, between Arrowhead Parkway and 26th Street, and lies west of Veterans Parkway. On the corner of 26th and Veterans Parkway, there's about a 5-acre parcel that Avera has owned for quite a while, and they've actually started the rezoning process to build a clinic, very similar to what they have at 69th and Cliff. We don't know if construction will start this year, but they are going through the process to get ready. Other things happening in the Dolly development, there's a Capital Card Services has a new 40-some thousand square foot office building out there. There's a new Best Western Hotel. Casey's is going to build down by the Rosa Park School, and there'll be another, so you East Siders, there's another food option coming in that'll be between First Bank and Trust and Buffalo Wild Wings. We can't announce it yet, but they are looking at that lot along Arrowhead, so that'll be coming in as well. Just down the road at 57th and Veterans Parkway, Sanford is going to be building a clinic, it's about a 70,000 square foot clinic, Lewis Drug, very similar to what they have in other parts in the town. And they are going to start construction this year with a completion date of next fall. Interestingly enough, I was able to attend, they had an announcement this morning of their construction plans. If you haven't seen it already, it'll be on the news. In addition to this clinic and a clinic in Harrisburg, they're jumping into orthopedics in a big way. They're taking the Vandermark Clinic. They're going to add 2 levels to that, starting possibly yet this year. That'll add 33,000 square feet. And then starting in 21, they're doing design right now. They're going to be building a 163,000 square foot orthopedic hospital, probably north of the Vandermark site. And that's an exciting project. There'll be 12 new operating rooms, additional orthopedic surgeons, and all that comes with that. So it's a really exciting time for them. Also on the east side at 41st and South Faith, which is east of Veterans Parkway, is the new Ben Rifle Middle School. Now, I just have to say, being a jackrabbit, the color and the fact that it's bison was a little disconcerting with Summit League coming up, but we'll get past it. Oh, it's a great project, great project. And you can tell that my staff put this together because this is what the Village Cooperative, which is a senior housing facility. So thanks, guys. It's located at 77th South Cliff. Beautiful project. It's going to be going in the ground, too. West side, moving over there, there's a 30,000 square foot Fairway store at the northeast corner of 41st Street and South Ellis Road. In addition, in that same area, Flyboy Donuts, surprisingly, and Stenslin are going into partnership, and I can't think of anything better than donuts and milk. So again, my staff was thinking of me. The big project this year was completing the Mount Rushmore of high schools that we have here, with the Jefferson Cavaliers going in. That project is underway. It'll open along with the middle school next fall. And a big shout out to Mark Cotter and his team, who had to scramble to open bids and get design done to urbanize Marion Road so it was accessible for the school in time for it to be open. So good work to them. Also on that side of town is the USD Discovery District, which is going to be the future home of Lifescape. And there's coming to Planning Commission with part of their plan development actually tomorrow night. And then, of course, Lake Lorraine, as you've all probably been able to experience the wonderful amenities and stores out there. Dave & Buster's and a new Hyatt Hotel and opening this year, I believe. And then they've got a lot of walking trails and walkability and really trying to accentuate the lake as an amenity out there. And then going to the mall area. As you may have heard or may not have heard, the Sioux Falls Ford area is being redeveloped. They'll be tearing down that building and they're starting construction this spring. They've already announced that a Chipotle will be there and a Longhorn Steakhouse. which is kind of neat because they're new products to our market. I can tell you there's a couple more food options coming into that area that have not been announced that are also new to Sioux Falls, and you'll be glad to hear when they come. So one of them, one of my son's favorite places up in the city, so he was very excited to hear that was going to happen, but I haven't really told him yet, but you know. Anyway. Dang kids, you know, you don't know. So the question people ask, what's 2020 look like? Are we going to have another record year? What's going to happen? I will tell you that last year we brought in over 660 new acres in planned development into the city, which is a high mark. We generally average around 400. Positive sign. As of the end of February, we already had over $53 million in building permits that had been issued. But here's the important and most interesting fact, is that as of today, there's $120 million worth of commercial permits that have either been issued and not picked up or are currently under review. There's $20 million worth of permits ready to be picked up, and another 100 that's currently under review, and of course new stuff comes in all the time, and we're not even into a really, really busy season yet. So it looks like a great year for us, and we're very excited. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Regan Smith, who is not a stranger to any of you. You keep hearing about all this flooding. Of course, the weathermen like to talk about a lot. We have Regan to give you the real story. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'm going to let you know what's going on with the spring flood forecast, and then also, while I'm here, give you an overview of how we handle disasters here in South Dakota. Well, as everybody knows, 2018 and 19 were record years in Sioux Falls and the area in terms of precipitation and flooding. Things have improved a little bit, but we're still record levels as far as the river levels, soil moisture, snowpack in the Big Sioux Basin up to Watertown is above normal, and the predicted rain in March and April is predicted to be above normal also. So we are at an elevated risk of flooding. The last 10 days have been very nice, perfect weather, and the next week looks great. I think I just read a forecast. We're looking at rain beginning again next week, so maybe we'll go back to normal. But we're in better shape now than we were a couple weeks ago, but we're not completely out of the woods. Some important factors to watch here will be the rate of snow melt, that freeze-thaw cycle, and the amount of snow and rain that we get at that time. So how do we handle disasters or these events that seem to be happening all the time now here in Sioux Falls? I like to say there's three components that we look at. Number one is coordination. The city has a city multi-agency coordination team, or the MACT, and there's 40 employees that are trained up in that incident management system. And that's a management system that's mandated by the federal government for coordinating those large emergency response and recovery events. Brings together many different departments and jurisdictions under one department. They develop a plan, one set of objectives, one set of priorities, determine resource allocation and management, and then ultimately ensures that efficient and effective response and recovery. It doesn't take the responsibility away from anybody or any departments. They still have to do what they need to do. The components of this incident command system are number one at the top, and you probably can't see this, but we've got a unified command group, and typically that's made up of your police chief, your fire chief, your public works director. I kind of call those our generals for the city on a normal event. But depending on the event, we can bring in the public health director, the school superintendent. If it gets large enough, we'll bring in the sheriffs from Lincoln and Minnehaha County. Also under the system, we have operations, and those are the folks that are out there making it happen for us. Public works, police, fire, the park department, those folks out in the field, health, that are making it happen. To support them are planning. We're looking forward. What are we going to need moving forward as far as resources? How are we doing? The mapping, the situation reports, those type of things. Logistics, they're finding us the resources, the stuff, the equipment as we move forward. Finance, they're getting us paid, paying our contractors, procuring things we may or may not need. Public information, they're educating the public and the media. And then safety, we'll have a safety officer on every event, and it's always going to be one of our primary objectives to keep responders, the general public, and volunteers safe. The incident command system can be used for natural and man-made disasters, floods, tornadoes, ice storms, and things like we used it on the Copper Lounge incident here in town. Sioux Falls Fire uses it every day. Every time they go on a call, they use that incident command system. Also on special events, the Sturgis Bike Rally, we use it. The City 4th of July Parade, the Olympics, those type of things, you can manage large numbers of jurisdictions and departments. We do have an emergency operations center in the law enforcement training room, and that's where we'll meet, support, and again, facilitate all the operations that are going out in the field. So the incident command system brings together the city and the entire community during disaster as one team. A second component is collaboration. It's not just city departments that are involved with disaster response and recovery. There's many partnerships in place. Probably the most key one is we've developed an emergency management network, and that includes city departments, Minnehaha and Lincoln counties, the school districts from Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, Brandon, the private schools, state agencies such as Department of Transportation, Highway Patrol, Health, Homeland Security, Department of Corrections, National Guard, many federal agencies, the 6 hospitals here in town, the Airport Authority, universities, private utility, National Weather Service, volunteer agencies, so it could go on and on. But this group, we've been meeting for about 23 years. We meet 6 times a year to plan, share information, train, and network. Probably networking is our key thing. We get to know each other before the disaster happens so we can come together in a real easy way. Also, we have a healthcare coalition here in town. That's the hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, assisted living. There's 45 members of that. Safe and secure schools. It's our Sioux Falls Public Schools, police, fire, emergency management, and they plan and train to make sure our schools are safe. And then community organizations active in disaster. And that's groups such as the Red Cross, Salvation Army, Helpline Center, United Way, churches. They come together to assist impacted residents, manage donations, and volunteers. The third component is communications. How are we going to communicate to the public during these times? Under that multi-agency coordination team, we've got a public information officer group that's led by Sandy Frentz with our health department. She works closely with Public Works, Fire, Police, the Communications Division. They also work with partners from the school district, county, state, FEMA, and hospitals to coordinate and standardize that messaging during disasters. Some of the tools or external communications that we do, you might see when we activate the daily media briefs. We take a lot of inquiries for information from the media, the public, so we get those right answers. We usually put together a robust website depending on the scenario, whether it's a flood or a tornado, to share road closures, assistance, guidance to the residents, how to help, how to clean up, that type of thing. Social media, obviously that's a good way for us to push information to the public and the media. Rumor control. During disasters, it seems like these rumors come out of everywhere. And it was no exception last year during the flooding and the tornado. I don't know how many calls we took. The levee is breaking. The levee is breaking. So that public information group would work with operations to follow up on it and get that answer out there. The other one was a lot of calls about there's looters in the auto parts store. Well, we had to many times reassure them, no, those are just employees cleaning up. But anyway, it's something we had to follow up on and answer many, many times until we dispelled that. Helpline Center 211, they answer calls from residents who need assistance or information, and those people that want to help us, those volunteers. And real key partner for us. In the flood last year, they took 1,500 calls, and in the tornado, 2,800 calls. So if we would have had all of those non-emergency calls coming into the 911 center or my office or various city offices, it really would have been overwhelming and not efficient. We wouldn't have got that good information to the public. So they're a key part of us. Internal communications with the employees. We want to do a better job sharing information with all city employees so you know what the situation is, what those recovery plans are, how we're doing. So you can talk to your family, your friends, your neighbors, be proud of what we're doing, and then help them and help share that message with us. So we're going to commit, if we ever have another flood or tornado or whatever, we'll be ready. We're going to put that information, those situation reports, on Insight for you guys to go look at. We'll probably share emails with you also too as need be. So we know that was a shortfall the last year, and we're going to do better there. So with that, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work and efforts over the 2019 events. Let's hope 2020 is going to be a better year. I think it is. But given the elevated flood threat, we are at an appropriate level of readiness right now. We're prepared for those things we can control. We've got inmates filling sandbags right now. We've got pumps ready, communications plans ready, and then we're going to monitor those things we can't control, such as the rate of melt, the rainfall, the river levels, things like that. But, I'm confident we have the team, we have the plan, and the resources are in place to tackle this as needed. So with that, I appreciate your time again, and next up is going to be Jill Franken to talk about the Triage Center. Thank you.
I just got to say, I think we should give Reagan one more round of applause. He does such a tremendous job for the city. Well, hi, everybody. Again, I'm Jill Franken with the Health Department, and I'm here to provide a few updates for you regarding the link, which I heard the mayor gave you the name. Is that correct? You heard the name already? You're some of the first people in town. You are about the first people in town to hear that. So what a scoop that he provided you. That was just tremendous. So, well, let's get started talking about what's happening in our community and in our neighborhood. I am here to tell you that One Sioux Falls is alive and well with this project, and it is working in Sioux Falls. Prioritizing health and safety has mobilized this community. It's certainly mobilized our partnerships. And an important one has been formed through the city, through the county, through Avera and Sanford, all working together to form a nonprofit, which is the Triage Center. And it is going to be a new link to care, and it is moving forward. This nonprofit, of which our very own Mayor Paul is chair, is now seeking proposals for service providers to select who will operate the Triage Center. So there's an RFP that's gone out, and the letter of intent is actually due by Friday for those who have an interest in writing a proposal. And then the proposals are due around the end of April. So we should be making some announcements around the end of April or early May announcing who will be running the Triage Center for this community. So this entity, the Triage Center nonprofit, will also be that entity that will be leasing the annex from the city, and they'll be the ones that'll be responsible for all of the remodel for those services that'll be provided in the annex, which is right in our neighborhood. So the aim is that we'll be open later this year, sometime in the fall, and we are really looking forward to making great progress. And you'll start seeing some of that progress and updates coming along as the remodel starts happening for that facility. So why is this so important? You probably read on the prior slide that 2 in 5 young adults with mental illness go untreated. You also probably read that nearly 9 out of 10 who have substance use disorder or addiction did not get treatment. This is a national statistic that can't be too far off in our community. It's also because of people like Melissa, as you can see to the right, whose son died of a heroin overdose. I'm going to read her words to you. In the early stages of the addiction, when it could have been most treatable, we did not know what we were dealing with exactly. When we took our son to the hospital, we were told he had a mental health issue, when in fact he was dealing with withdrawal from substances. Having trained staff that knows what to look for could have helped us get the right help earlier in the process. That's from Melissa, and this is pretty personal for me because she happens to be my ex-sister-in-law. It wasn't my nephew who passed away, but it was her stepson. So the triage center will be a link for people with psych urgent needs or addiction crisis to access treatment and stabilization. This is such an important gap that we have in our community right now. Folks being served will be linked to a successful path towards management of their addiction or mental illness through case management and referral. You probably right now are sitting in your chairs knowing of somebody somewhere, whether it's a family member, a friend, a neighbor, someone you maybe even work with here. The odds are pretty good that we all work with someone who has a mental illness or might be suffering from an addiction. This is going to be the center that and the set of services that'll be for any of those individuals that you may encounter. And you may be very well this person who walks alongside someone and brings them to the triage center someday. So the evidence is really there that this is the kind of care providing community that can make a difference, and we're very excited for this to get started. So next, I just want to give you a couple of updates about what we're doing. You've probably seen some evidence of this, but through the health department in Live Well Sioux Falls, we've launched a campaign, and I give Mary Michaels a lot of credit for this campaign. If she's in the room and you see her, please give her a pat on the back. This is a community awareness campaign that we've launched to reduce the stigma related to mental illness and addiction and create more community awareness around these issues. So anyone, anywhere, even here, was launched just a few months ago. And hopefully you've seen the billboards, you've maybe checked out the website, evenhere.org, which includes great resources. It has a search function in it in partnership with 211 for you to go in, put in your zip code, and you can see the set of services that are located near you. You maybe have also followed evenhere.org on social media. So again, Mary has been instrumental in helping to pull this all together and to launch this campaign. And she did organize an event last fall that you may have gone to and attended. It was around opioid addiction and addiction issues in general. We brought some national speakers in to talk about this, and we plan to do that again this year, so stay tuned. There will be more coming and more work built out around that campaign as well. So I wouldn't be a good public health director if I didn't talk about the topic that's got the world's attention right now, and that's coronavirus. I had to take just a couple minutes here to really thank Sandy France and also Regan, who's really becoming very engaged in our work now on the response effort and the preparedness that we'll be doing as a public health entity around coronavirus. While we don't have any confirmed cases in South Dakota, we do know that the global situation and the national situation is quickly evolving. And so the goal of public health is really a response focused on rapid identification of cases of coronavirus or COVID-19, as it's also called, and to decrease potential transmission of this illness in our community. So because the virus that causes coronavirus is transmitted similar to viruses that cause influenza, we really encourage right now, the biggest thing that all of us can do is good respiratory hygiene. You've probably heard this before in other years. We really, really pushed this out with H1N1, and then every year since then, it's been a really big deal to remember, the basic tenets of how to use good hygiene, respiratory hygiene. But everyone should practice good hand washing. You should wash your hands for 20 seconds at least, a minimum. You should also cover your cough. So for example, use a Kleenex and then throw that Kleenex away, wash your hands. You should also stay home if you're sick. Encourage each other. If you're sick, please stay home and encourage your coworkers to do the same. That's really important. And I happen to even, if you don't have the ability to wash your hands or something, you might have some hand sanitizer that you want to make sure and use often, and make sure that if you do, it's greater than 60% alcohol based. So those are some of the things that you can do to make sure you're reducing the spread and also reducing your impact of possibly getting infected. So those are some of the things. There will be more information coming out, more work on public health in the days and weeks to come. And so you'll be hearing more about this as this situation continues to evolve. In the meantime, I'm now very pleased to bring Sarah Van Voorst to the stage from our very own PD. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Hi, my name is Sarah Van Voorst, and I'm a police officer with the Sioux Falls PD. Currently on patrol right now in the downtown area, but as of April 20th, I will be taking over the Mental Health Community Resource Officer position. Just going to start this out by telling a story to illustrate why this position was created. Last fall, my partner and I were dispatched to what seemed like a pretty routine call in the downtown area, an intoxicated subject that was passed out in a park downtown. But once we arrived on scene, we quickly determined that it was not the usual call, and this subject had ingested a large quantity of pills in an attempt to take his own life. A couple 100 feet away, his girlfriend sat beside a tree, attempting to take her own life as well by cutting her wrists. We helped that couple that day get the help they needed by getting them to the hospital, getting the medical help they needed, and referring them to the mental health help to help that day. But just a few months later, this past January, I ran into this couple again in the parking lot of the Bishop Dudley as I was flagged down by them. They wanted to let us know that we had helped save their life that day, not just by getting them the medical help to help them survive that incident, but by referring them and connecting them to resources that helped them change the way that they were living their lives. Since that time, law enforcement has had contact with this same couple numerous times, but this is just a perfect example of the disruption that can happen in the lives of those who suffer with mental illness, and also demonstrates the need for this position. Since 2013, the Sioux Falls PD has experienced a 65% increase in the number of mental health and mental illness calls for service. As police officers, when we are dispatched to those calls, we're able to help for that brief moment of time in that mental health crisis, and then we move on to the next call. But this only puts a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem and does not address the underlying concerns of severe and persistent mental illness and addiction. With this newly created position, I will be assigned those cases for those frequent faces that law enforcement encounters, and I can follow up on them. I can get to know these people, and I can develop a rapport with them, and connect with them, and then be able to refer them to the many community service providers in Sioux Falls. Helping those with mental health and addiction takes time and it takes energy, and this position will be specifically dedicated to that. A few other areas of focus in this new position will be my work on the mental health court team, which is one of the problem-solving courts in Sioux Falls. The goal of the mental health court is to keep individuals with mental illness out of the jail system and get them connected to the mental health resources and on a structured treatment plan. I will also be a liaison for the new Community Triage Center, or LINKed, in which individuals can be brought in by the PD. Here they will be exposed to and offered the resources available to help them overcome their addiction issues or achieve mental health stabilization. So far, I've been busy developing relationships with the numerous community service providers in town, and I know that these relationships I'm developing will only help me to enhance my ability to connect people with the treatments and resources that they need. Addiction and mental illness often go hand in hand, and the ultimate goal of this position and why it was created is to help those vulnerable populations and individuals to get connected to the mental health and addiction providers necessary so that they can achieve independence in their lives. In doing so, this would eventually reduce the total number of mental health calls for service that the PD responds to, ultimately increasing the health and safety for all citizens in the city. I definitely look forward to this challenge of this new role, and I appreciate that the city is focusing on this important concern of mental illness and addiction. So that's just a brief summary of what my new role is going to entail, and now I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Paul.
Okay, we have a special guest. We're going to wrap it up by talking for a couple minutes about, there we go, mentoring. Okay. and I'll introduce our guest in a second. Let me set this up. So mentorship has been something that I feel is it's important to me, but I think is very important to our community, and I've seen the need for mentors in our city more than ever before. The last 2 years in office, I've spent a lot of time just listening to the challenges in the city, and you sometimes feel like there's this dichotomy in Sioux Falls. There's this growing Sioux Falls, and we're growing by 3,000-4,000 people every year, and we're adding homes, and we're adding jobs. And then you have this growing segment of the population that's struggling in our city. And as this city grows, this city grows. And how do you invest and help this city? How do you help felons coming out of jail who are having trouble getting housing? How do you help senior citizens who are alone and need someone to care for them? How do you help a third grader whose dad is incarcerated and who doesn't have a good role model in his life? Mentorship can solve a lot of those challenges, and it's a very relational focus. A lot of times people look at government and they say, create a program, invest in money, invest in dollars in something. You know what? We really just need some investments in people. And so the Sioux 52 initiative is an effort to do that, to connect the people in our city with all the great mentorship programs that exist. We have several thousand people in our community who are waiting to be mentored. And I need to connect people in the community with those people who need mentors, those kids, those felons, those people who live in our homeless and vulnerable populations with mentorship opportunities. So that's why Sioux 52 was born. I'm not going to get into a lot more about it because there's a lot more that I could say, but I asked Dakota to join me. So Dakota, why don't you just introduce yourself for this crowd?
Yes. Hi, my name is Dakota Jordan. I am not from Sioux Falls, but I've lived in Sioux Falls since April of 2016. And I am 1 week exactly into my new role, doing all of the fundraising and all of the marketing at the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House, which is our local homeless shelter downtown.
But you also you also worked at the banquet for several years.
Yes, so fresh out of college, that was my first job for about
Right.
2.5 years. I recruited all the volunteer groups that came and
So
served
very
the
in
meals.
tune with our vulnerable population,
Yes.
vulnerable communities. So tell me about mentorship for you. And a lot of times you think, okay, is this a typical person that needs mentoring? A lot of times you think of some of the populations I described, but mentorship has been impactful on someone like Dakota. So I asked if she would kind of tell what that's meant to you.
Yes. So mentorship was huge. I think throughout my entire life, I could talk about that, but you guys don't have all day. So since I moved to Sioux Falls, when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. And then I moved into a role at the banquet where it kind of would help to know everyone, to know who's who, because I needed to get volunteer groups. And so there were people in the community that saw potential in me, which I think is the biggest thing. We need to stop and see people and realize that people have potential, and then invest in them, because sometimes it's not formal. I do have 2 formal mentors that I've gotten by going through an actual leadership program, but I have multiple other mentors that I just get coffee with, people who have recognized hey, she's got something and she might need some help along the way. And one of those was very shortly when I moved into my role at the banquet, and they were like, hey, let me introduce you to some people who are who around town, and some people you should connect with, some different groups you should get involved with. And I truly wouldn't be where I'm at in my career, with as young as I am, I wouldn't be in this spot, being able to share all of my energy and my love and my light with all of the people around me. I think what's really important about that, yes, I am not the most vulnerable population. You might not think that I am the most in need, but I have a role to play in the community, and I think that I have a lot to offer, and obviously some other people have as well because they've taken the time to invest in me. But without that, I wouldn't have gotten through it. I've been through some hard stuff in my life, and I've dealt with things that really brought my self-confidence down, and without those people continuing to invest in me and take those time to help me work through it, because sometimes we don't always have the people in our life, like family or parents or whatever, to be that person, I wouldn't have gotten where I'm at and have the outlook to, I feel, that I can actually mentor others and have a positive impact on other people.
Right. So mentorship takes a lot of different forms, and I guess the reason I thought Dakota would be a good person to talk to is someone noticed you. People noticed
Yeah.
you. So I've been described, or I've heard people describe others as, we need more people noticers, okay? Like notice someone. Like, hey, I know there's this guy in my department who I think could benefit from me maybe pouring into a little bit. Me maybe spending some time with him or her, once a month. That's mentorship. Mentorship doesn't have to be formal programs that we go through. It's walking alongside someone. In my case, you have heard the story of Kent at our first one-team meeting. It took the form of a 62-year-old homeless guy that I mentored for several years. Again, never thought a 40-year-old guy would be mentoring a 60-year-old guy, but I did. That's mentoring in our community. So what would you say, the last question I'd have for you is, piece of advice for anybody in the room who maybe wants to be mentored? Because, for instance, I had a college kid come up to me about 3 months ago and said, hey, Mayor, would you be willing to mentor me and then just have coffee with me once a month? I got this girl I might be proposing to, and I'm trying to find a job, and she's just trying to figure out life. And I'm like, yeah, why not? I mean, he asked me, so we've been meeting on the regular at our secret meeting spot, and I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm helping him a lot, but that's an informal mentorship that we have. So that took a little bit of nerve for him to reach out and ask me, what's your advice to someone who maybe wants to have a relationship like that with someone?
Yes. So I ask is the easiest way to say it. But I think sometimes people are like, well, I don't know who to ask, which I guess can be tricky depending on what you're looking for. I asked some people that were close to me within the people that I knew, who are some powerful women in Sioux Falls that I need to know? Who's out there moving and shaking? Who do I need to talk to and just ask them to coffee? And I did. And those people are people that I count as mentors now. So I think you can use the resources around you and say, who's who, or I want to build this skill. Who do you know that's good at that? And ask for that. But I think it's on both ends. One, you have to be, if you want to be mentored, you have to be brave enough to ask, which obviously I'm in fundraising, so that's pretty easy for me. I realize it's probably not for everyone. But I think on the other end of it, people have to realize that we all have the capacity to mentor. If someone, I think because I've been mentored now, if someone said, hey, will you mentor me? We should be proud of what we have and the capacity we have. Obviously, someone sees something in you to say, you have something that I want, and give it to me, and you can give something back. All the mentors that I've had have said, well, you've given me so much back as well, and I'm like, well, I don't know anything, that's why I came to you. So I think believing in ourselves that we have something to offer is just as important as asking, believing that you can be a mentor and a mentee.
I love it. Thank you for being here. Can you give her a hand for coming here and doing this? Thank you.